Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. I hope you're having an amazing day. Thank you very much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now we're taking a look at CELO, which is essentially a mobile DeFi, if I'm not mistaken. And again, we're not really looking at the fundamentals here. It's really just strictly a technical analysis. So pay attention to that, of course. You'll learn a few things here today. I like to educate on best practice and obviously help you identify a good entry point in this climate. We always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first as well, kind of get a baseline of what's going on. Okay, so this is not financial advice by any means. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. You should always do your own research. If you're interested in a Signal group, I have the link in the description below for my premium Patreon account. Furthermore, there is a link to my Telegram community as well. Reference that if you'd like to learn as much as possible. Okay, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at CELO. And before we do, if you're new to the channel, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first, get a baseline of the market, see what's going on right now. And as you probably already know, at this point in time, the Bitcoin market is abysmal. We're testing the 30,000 mark once again. So let's take a look here. First of all, let's go to the 4-hour chart. And we'll go ahead and turn on the moving averages here. So just so you know, this is tradingview.com, and I use the 200 and the 50-day moving average. The 200 is this purple line here, and the 50 is the yellow line, or I guess it's more so orangish. And as we can tell, the price got rejected at the 50 here recently and has been selling off ever since, and it just about hit 30,000. What was it? About 30, yeah, 30,117 is a rough estimate on that price right there. So that was just roughly about 8 hours ago in the wee hours of the morning, depending on your location. And unfortunately, Bitcoin is suffering. So we've been on this massive sell-off in the last week or so, but last couple of days, last 24 to 48 hours, just really terrible. Not super happy with Bitcoin right now, but I don't think anyone is unless you were shorting it recently. So obviously that's a conversation for another day. But looking at it here, we got 30,000 as a major support level. Thankfully that held recently. Major resistance at about 42,000, and there are just say 31,000, 41,000 for some some other support and resistance levels, kind of in between. But for the most part, I would say 30 and 42 are the big boys right now. It's working itself into this channel, and look how long of a channel this is. So it's staying here for a long time, which is very unusual. Bitcoin either goes up or down. It doesn't typically go sideways. So we'll see what happens soon, but it's not looking great for Bitcoin. So unfortunately, that's kind of the case there. And I bet if we look at the 1-hour chart for Ishimoku, we will probably see that we're under the cloud. Big surprise there. So it's not really a buying opportunity at this point in time. Now, granted, the argument could be made, buy the dip. Yes, that's a possibility, of course, but do we know if we're at the bottom yet? Is Bitcoin going to break 30,000, then break 28,500 and head its way down to 24,000? Not quite sure at this point. It almost feels like it's going to happen, but again, there shouldn't be any feelings in Bitcoin, right? Or crypto trading, whatever. Do not trade with feelings, right? Just got to be logical and look at the numbers. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to Ethereum. So Ethereum is essentially very similar, right? We've tested the support level again. Big surprise there. Support level is right at about 1,700. It's hovering around 1760, 1770 right now, but we're under both moving averages, and we have a major resistance at 2,900. Will it get back there someday? Yeah, it will. If Bitcoin can get back up to 42,000 and higher, it'll be just fine. Ethereum will take off. But right now, there's so much indecision in the market. Nobody wants to invest in Ethereum or the ADAs or the Matics right now, for that matter, because even the really, really good, strong fundamental coins like Ethereum, they're no longer getting that market capitalization, right? So hard to say specifically where it goes, but it's not going to Ethereum right now. So all in all, that's kind of the state of the nation for Ethereum. Let's look at CELO here now. And this is quite interesting to me because this is moving almost contrary to Bitcoin, right? So let's take a quick look here. So Bitcoin, this is the last basically, what is it? We'll just say this is the last 4 days right here, this little block. And we go over to CELO, the last 4 days, exact opposite. It is almost working as an inverse pair, if you're familiar with what that is. So unfortunately, we can't really count on Bitcoin right now But beneficially here, CELO does appear to be taking a lot of the capitalization. There's been a ton of movement, ton of volume here in the last, obviously, 48 to 72 hours. So take a look at the 1-day chart first and work our way down so we know what's going on in the big picture. So for CELO, first of all, the most recent price where it hit its lowest is $1.65. That's the most recent low. That's almost the same as its initial open. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That is part of the reason why we're seeing this ramp back up, because the average true range should probably be somewhere in the range of 390 to 550. Okay, now it's back up to that point. So what do you think is going to happen next? Well, it's honestly hard to say. However, most of the time when this occurs, you're going to see a slight retracement, should see some sideways action, then might possibly take itself on for another bull run. Now, is it going to go, shoot past its previous all-time high of what, $7.26? Probably not. I think we're a long ways off from that. However, the behavior recently, contrary to Bitcoin, tells me that there's possibility of that. Now, again, there's likely some fundamentals. I don't have any insight on the fundamentals here. If you do, feel free to include that in the comments below. Love to learn more about that, but outside of the fundamentals, which typically is a catalyst for something like this in the market, where we're at right now, the technical data tells us that it's probably just trying to find its average true range and get back into that price range. Okay, so that's what we're seeing on the 1-day chart. Keep in mind, with all this price movement, RSI is still under 70. Now it'll probably be over 70, obviously, on the 4-hour chart, because the lower the time frame, the more responsive it is, of course. But generally speaking, 1-day chart under 70 on the RSI, still in pretty good shape. There, as you can see, there's plenty more room for growth as a potential option, right? Not saying that will happen specifically. I do think that we're going to see somewhat of a consolidation period. It could be just a short, brief consolidation and another ramp up. But based on its history, it does tend to have these sharp increases and then fairly sharp decreases, right? Another thing we want to look at is how, obviously this is contrary to Bitcoin last 4 days, but how did it perform previously, right? So April 17th was like the first major sell-off in Bitcoin. Let's take a look. So yeah, it was impacted by that. However, 2 days later, when the market kept going down, CELO went right back up on the 20th. It's basically like the 22nd was, and that's this right here. This is a major sell-off, a second major sell-off for Bitcoin in April. And we see that it ramped up really hard in between them. So it responds quite well to significant decreases in price. So if we see Bitcoin dumping down to just say 24,000, it passes 28,500, we might see CELO take off again. It seems to be fairly well responsive there. Let's see here. How did it respond to the Elon candle May 12th? Okay, it was impacted there, but it bounced back up, came down. And then the 18th here, no coin was able to avoid that. That was the China candle, for lack of better terms, when Bitcoin was removed from the banking industry in China. So everything kind of went downhill from there. So pretty standard, but also works very well and responds quickly to Bitcoin selling off. So perhaps a lot of the market, this absorbs some of the market capitalization when it's leaving Bitcoin. Anyway, let's just take a look at the 4-hour chart, see what's going on here. Great news, we're over both moving averages. Broke through the 200, has been over the 50 for some time, and as well as the fact that even though we were over 70 on the RSI, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a sell signal, just means that you probably want to wait and consider, because if you have a position right now, more often than not, when you sell, as soon as the RSI peaks up over 70, then you're not able to get as many gains as you would when the RSI comes back down. Now, I prefer to use a 15-minute chart for that, but in general, this being up over 70, it's not necessarily meaning that we have to sell it right away, but it does imply that there could be a retracement, which we've experienced here, obviously, in this last 4-hour time frame. It's worked itself back down at least 50%. And that's pretty common. Anytime you have a sharp increase like this, you're going to see a retracement of somewhere in the range of 50 to 60%. So I'm not surprised by that. Let's go ahead and move on. But really quick before we do, you see this this right here. Just pay attention to this. See how that we have the convergence here? As soon as that happened, you see the price increase, and it went on a tear since then. Just want to identify that because oftentimes as a swing trader, there are certain things you want to pay attention to. The MACD crossing, from the lower point to the higher point, the 12 intersecting with the 26 essentially, that orange intersecting with the purple line, that essentially tells us that there's bullish momentum, right? Because it goes from a strong bearish sentiment to a bullish sentiment. And once it broke through the 50, it was, basically open field right there, right? So just keep that in mind. When you see something like that, that's an indication of a buy signal, especially when the RSI is really, really close to 30 and or overextended past 30. So again, just something to note. It's not a guarantee, of course. There's no guarantees in trading, but this increases your odds of success by understanding and looking for those signals, right? Again, that's more so effective on the 4-hour chart as a swing trader. If you're doing like a short-term day trade, obviously it's good to identify that that is the case, but we're well past that now, right? So it doesn't really matter if you're going to jump in right now. Look at the 1-hour chart. We'll take a quick look at Ishimoku, and big surprise here. We crossed over the cloud, basically right here, tested again, second time, stayed above, and ever since it's been going up, right? So why don't we do this here? Let's go here and just quickly look at that. Interestingly enough, as soon as the price came up over the cloud, within about 1 hour, the MACD was intersecting on the 4-hour chart. Okay, so those two things commonly work in tandem. So right around here is when the MACD was intersecting, and coincidentally went up over the cloud and stayed above the cloud. So it basically means that it's still a buy signal, right? It's a buy signal as soon as the price comes up over the cloud. Now it might be a little overextended right now. Perhaps you want to wait for it to calm down or retrace a little bit. But generally speaking, pay attention to that as well. That tends to be a pretty obvious indicator when the cloud is over, or sorry, when the price action is over the cloud on the 1-hour chart, concurrent with the 4-hour chart and the MACD converging upwards. So moving on to the 15, let's go ahead and take a look at the EMA and VWAP lines. So if you're new to the channel, got this blue line here, that's the VWAP, that's a volume weighted average price. Takes the volume in the last 24 hours, expresses it as a price, and tells us if the price is either above, it's considered a support level. If it's below, it's considered resistance. So right now you can kind of tell that the VWAP is working as a support concurrent with the EMA line. This is the EMA 15, and if you can see here, this red line, that is essentially the EMA 15. It's an exponential moving average. I use the 15. Industry standard is 9 and 20. I split the difference so I have 1 instead of 2 moving averages. I like to have less moving parts because oftentimes you can have too many indicators at one time. I prefer only like 2, 3, maybe 4 at most indicators present per time frame. And each time frame has its own specific indicators you want to use. In 15 minutes or less, VWAP and EMA is ideal and or preferred. So now the benefit of the EMA, this red line, is basically just telling us that the price action is over. It's considered bullish, right? So basically it tells us it's more of a momentous indicator than anything else. It's funny, the MACD, if you're familiar with that, of course, I highlighted that already, the moving average convergence divergence uses the 12 and the 26 EMA lines. They're intersecting constantly for converging and divergences, right? This is essentially a very similar thing, only it runs on the price itself, right? So it's nice to be able to see that instead of an independent oscillator, it's overlapping the price. And it's helpful because it tells you, okay, bulls are in control. So as you can see here, take a look, when the bulls really started ramping off, you got this indicator here, these 2 yellow lines, or those 2 little, I guess they're more so carrots or arrows. That's part of my EMA and VWAP notification that I have, right? And that tells me that I've got confirmation heading in the right direction. In other words, we got EMA and VWAP lines. The price is above both, right? Check. As well as the fact that we got 2 solid green bars that's closing in order. In other words, that's 30 minutes of confirmation. So for me, that's commonly an entry point that I would take right there. But what you do is you take a look, you see the EMA and how it's responding, you see how the price goes sideways, and then it bounces off the EMA and keeps going up. Confirmation. So that's like further confirmation you'd either add to your position here and or just understand that the bulls are definitely in control. Comes up here, see how it wasn't even tested, it just kept going. That's even further confirmation. And then concurrently, once you've identified that, say you took entry here, and you see that, okay, great, EMA's riding the price up. As soon as we get to this top point, RSI is over 70, you wait for the RSI to come back down, and then you sell. So I commonly like to sell right in this range here, which would put us approximately right there. Now what that would do is that would net you somewhere in the range of, wow, 25% in this scenario. That's quite a lot, because obviously you don't expect those kind of gains all the time. I'm happy with 5 to 10%. Even 3% is great. That's a good day in my book. But in this situation here with this kind of price action, you can identify when the bulls are in control, then you're in very, very good shape. I mean, had you taken entry back here, it wouldn't have been terrible, but then the price would have came back up and came down and retraced. When the price comes under EMA and VWAP, that's kind of a warning sign, right? So right around here, I would have got kind of leery. I might have trimmed some of my position or, increased my stop limit. But generally speaking, you want to look for these two solid green bars above EMA and VWAP that tell you that the price action is moving in the direction you want to head. Inverse also applies too, going short, of course, but most of us, majority of my community members are going, they're going long, right? So that's kind of the concept there. Now we don't really necessarily need to look at the 1 minute chart, but if you were to, you can kind of see some of these things that I highlighted before. Keep in mind the EMA is more responsive on the shorter time frames. So if you're looking at the 1 hour, correction, the 1 minute chart, the EMA is going to respond quicker. So it may be a little less effective. That's why I like to get confirmation on the 15 and then look at the 1 minute chart to kind of see, because this responds a lot faster and sometimes it gives you false signals. So just keep that in mind, but generally speaking, that's kind of what I wanted to show you here today. So my prediction for this, right, because I know that's why a lot of you are here, is that I think CELO will stay where it's at generally for a little while. And I do feel like it will probably go sideways for a little bit and or retrace. I know that's kind of a general response because the fact that, why wouldn't it do that, right? But if you consider the fact that it's been moving contrary to Bitcoin, I would venture to guess that, we're going to see some sideways action if Bitcoin drops lower. I wouldn't be surprised if CELO continues to increase, right? If Bitcoin drops below 30,000 and starts hovering around 28.5 to 30, that little channel there, then we could see CELO take off again. Again, just based on the fact that it responds uniquely to Bitcoin. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Obviously, research, see if there's some fundamentals here, because that could very well be the catalyst. But it could also just be the fact that it's this knee-jerk reaction to when Bitcoin sells off, people jump into CELO. So just something to pay attention to. So I hope you did find benefit here. Thank you so much for joining. If you liked the video, feel free to do so. And if you'd like to subscribe, of course, I have videos like this daily. But more importantly, I do have a Signal group too. You might want to just make sure to reference there as well. Had pretty good success with that ultimately, and some really awesome, happy community members. So really appreciate you checking that out if you get a chance. That's the link in the description below through my premium Patreon account. It's not a premium, it's a premium Patreon account. And of course, there's also a free Telegram group too if you like to get engaged and kind of get to know the community better. We've got a good group of folks there, almost 500 plus. So, it's growing consistently, and there's a lot you can learn and absorb by just kind of jumping in there as well. Okay. So thank you again. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one.